Welcome back to my channel. To all my amazing viewers, thank you from the bottom of my heart for every like, comment, share, and moment you've spent with my stories. Your support turns ideas into magic and keeps me inspired to create more love, laughter, and joy in every word. You are the real reason this journey is so beautiful. Stay tuned, stay kind, and always believe in stories that make your heart smile. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, revealing the polished glass lobby of Sterling Vale Inc., nestled in the heart of downtown Chicago. Everything gleamed. Floors, walls, even the receptionist's desk. The whole place screamed power, prestige, and perfection. Vanessa Jackson stood frozen for a beat, heels pressed together and resume clutched to her chest like a shield. She inhaled deeply, her dark curls bouncing slightly as she squared her shoulders and stepped forward. She introduced herself and stated she was there for the 10 a.m. internship interview with the Sterling design team, masking the nerves with a smile. The receptionist glanced up, looked her over, then asked for her name. After typing something on her keyboard, she instructed Vanessa to take the elevator to the 37th floor, informing her that they would be expecting her. Vanessa thanked her and stepped back into the elevator, this time alone. As the car ascended, she silently rehearsed her pitch. Her fingers trembled, not out of fear exactly, but from the sheer weight of the moment. 4 years of top grades at Columbia College Chicago, 2 summer internships, and a portfolio she had poured her heart into. This internship wasn't just another stepping stone. It was the one that could change her life. Sterling Vale wasn't just a fashion house. It was the fashion house. A place where legends were made. The doors opened to a floor painted in sleek white, dotted with fashion boards and glass-walled offices. A blonde woman in a pale pink suit ushered her into a minimalist meeting room. Inside sat 3 interviewers, 2 men and 1 woman, all white, all stylish, all expressionless. The interview began with standard questions about her inspiration, experience, and her vision of fashion in a changing world. Vanessa answered with calm confidence, presenting pieces from her digital portfolio. But then the tone shifted. One of the men, peering over his tortoiseshell frames, questioned whether she had ever worked in an environment with that level of prestige. She responded by highlighting her internships with 2 boutique labels and her backstage work at Chicago Fashion Week. The woman leaned in slightly, explaining that their brand represented a very specific aesthetic, classic, clean, high luxury, and asked how Vanessa's work aligned with that. Vanessa paused, understanding the subtext. Her designs were bold and vibrant, steeped in African patterns and cultural storytelling. It was who she was. She calmly stated that she believed fashion should evolve with culture, not cater to narrow standards, and that her goal was to bring beauty and strength from all backgrounds to the forefront. A cold silence followed. One of them scribbled something in their notes. The woman stood abruptly, signaling the end. She told Vanessa they would be in touch. Vanessa walked out, her legs shaky beneath her. As the door clicked shut behind her, a voice floated from the room. One of the interviewers whispered that she was talented but questioned if she really fit the Sterling image. Another chuckled and said they couldn't have someone like her representing the brand in Paris next season. Vanessa froze mid-step. The words hit harder than anything else. Someone like her. Her talent, vision, and hard work had been overshadowed by something she couldn't change. Her skin. She didn't cry until she reached the sidewalk. The sun bathed the streets in golden light as she turned a corner searching for somewhere quiet. Her phone buzzed and she quickly switched it to recording mode to leave a message for her best friend. She shakily said she'd been rejected. Not because of her work, but because of who she was. She hit send, though her hands continued to tremble. A tear slipped down her cheek just as a warm, older male voice asked if she was all right. She looked up and saw a man in a tailored navy suit with silver hair and sharp gray eyes. He offered her a monogrammed handkerchief. Embarrassed, she insisted she was fine but accepted the cloth and dabbed at her face. He asked if she'd had a bad day. She laughed without humor and said something like that. He studied her, then remarked that she reminded him of someone he'd known a long time ago, someone with fire in their eyes. Vanessa wasn't in the mood for conversation and replied sharply that fire didn't mean much when all people saw was the surface. He told her not to let others' small-mindedness shrink her brilliance. She arched a brow, asking if he always gave motivational speeches to crying strangers. He replied only to those who looked like they could change the world. Vanessa gave a soft smile, thanked him, and asked his name. He simply said Jonathan. "I'm Vanessa Jackson." She said she came for an interview at the 37th floor but was rejected because of her skin color. She thanked him again and returned the handkerchief, folded. He told her to keep it. She nodded once more and walked away. Jonathan remained where he stood, watching her disappear into the crowd. Slowly, his smile faded into something more complex, more pained. He pulled out his phone and made a call. He instructed the person on the other end to get him everything on Vanessa Jackson, her full application, portfolio, everything. The voice on the other end confirmed the request. Jonathan's gaze lingered on the street. After a pause, he added quietly that they should also find out who her mother was. Then he ended the call. The south side of Chicago was buzzing with energy, but inside Vanessa Jackson's modest apartment, it felt like the world had pressed pause. Her phone was lighting up nonstop. She had posted a short video the night before, raw, unfiltered, and still tear-streaked from her rejection at Sterling Vale. In it, she had spoken honestly about being turned away from a job she was qualified for, not because she lacked talent, but because her skin didn't match their image. She called out the reality of being black and brilliant in spaces never built for people like her. She hadn't expected it to go anywhere. Maybe a few likes, maybe a repost or two from friends. But by morning, the video had over 400,000 views and climbing. Comments poured in from across the country. Strangers offered support, solidarity, and outrage. Celebrities had reposted it with hashtags like "Let Vanessa in" and "Color is not a crime." Vanessa should have felt proud, empowered, but instead she sat on the edge of her bed in silence, trying to process the whirlwind. On FaceTime, her best friend Jasmine squealed that Vanessa's face had been featured on a major gossip blog. Vanessa managed a weak smile, confessing she hadn't expected to go viral for this. Jasmine told her to welcome the revolution and revealed that the Fashion Pulse wanted to interview her. Vanessa blinked in disbelief, but Jasmine insisted. She was becoming the face of a movement and needed to own it. Meanwhile, across town in a glass-walled penthouse in Lincoln Park, Jonathan Sterling stood alone in his private study, staring at an old photograph. It was faded and curling at the edges, two college students smiling into the camera, one white, one black. He in a rumpled flannel, she in a sunflower yellow dress. Camille. He hadn't said her name in years. He traced her face with his finger. The memory was painful. She had told him she was pregnant just days before graduation. His father found out. There were threats. Money was exchanged. Camille had been paid to disappear. When Jonathan finally found the courage to look for her, she was gone. Her phone disconnected. Her apartment in Atlanta emptied. A ghost. He had assumed she moved on. Maybe had the child. Maybe didn't. But now there was Vanessa. The same eyes. Same fire. And she had stood right in front of him. His assistant Tina entered holding a tablet. She had gathered everything on Vanessa Jackson, top of her class, resident of the South Side, raised by a single mother named Camille Jackson, who had passed away 2 years ago from cancer. No father listed on any official records. Jonathan's throat tightened. He asked the question already forming in his heart. Was she Camille's daughter? Tina confirmed it. They had run a DNA test using Vanessa's public data against Jonathan's medical records. A 99.9% match. She was his. Jonathan sat down slowly, absorbing the truth. He declared that he wanted to meet her in person, to tell her everything himself, not through the media or lawyers, but face to face. Tina nodded and said she would arrange something discreet. Later that evening, Vanessa sat cross-legged on her sofa, sifting through a flood of messages. Offers were pouring in, from fashion houses, magazines, and activists. But one message stood out. It was from someone representing a private investor and fashion philanthropist who wanted to meet her for a potential collaboration. The meeting was set for 11 a.m. the next morning at the Varelli Hotel. Discretion was requested. Vanessa tilted her head, puzzled by the anonymous request. She responded that she would be there. The next morning, Vanessa stood in a luxurious penthouse suite at the Varelli Hotel overlooking Lake Michigan. She wore a dark green blazer and wide-legged trousers. Her natural curls were styled in a crown. She felt visible and powerful, though nerves fluttered in her chest. A soft knock, and the door opened. Jonathan Sterling stepped inside. Vanessa's breath hitched as she recognized him, the man from the street, the one who had offered her the handkerchief. He introduced himself fully. Jonathan Sterling. Her eyes widened in shock. The CEO of Sterling Vale. Confused and breathless, she asked what this was about. He said he needed to tell her something important, something he should have known long ago. She took a step back, wary, asking if this was about the interview. He said it was about her, and about Camille. The name struck her like lightning. He revealed he had known Camille, loved her, that they had been together in college, until his family forced her out. Hadn't known Vanessa existed until recently. Vanessa's mind spun. She sank into a nearby chair, trying to absorb what she was hearing. He said he was her father. Jonathan nodded, eyes glistening. He repeated that he had no idea, that he would have done things differently if he had known. Vanessa's voice trembled as she demanded to know where he was when her mother worked double shifts and fought cancer, where he was when she died in Vanessa's arms. Jonathan swallowed, admitting he had failed them both. He carried the weight of being a coward. Vanessa's eyes burned with heartbreak and fury. She whispered that Camille had deserved better. Jonathan agreed. He told her she did too. From his coat pocket, he pulled a small box. Inside were old letters, yellowed by time. Letters he had written to Camille after she left, never knowing where to send them. He had kept them, hoping one day they might find her. Vanessa opened one with trembling hands. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she read. She asked why he chose to tell her now. Jonathan said the world already saw her strength, but he wanted her to know her truth. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, only for a chance to be part of her life. Vanessa looked away, then back at him. She whispered that everything had changed. He said he knew, but that nothing changed who she was. Vanessa stared at him. For the first time, she didn't see the billionaire. She saw a man wrecked by guilt and longing and too many years of silence. She stood and walked to the window, letting the wind from Lake Michigan rush in through the open glass. Behind her, Jonathan waited, silent. And in that moment, she didn't know if she wanted to scream or collapse into his arms. The grand ballroom at Sterling Vale buzzed with anticipation. Rows of reporters lined the perimeter, cameras flashing as executives, designers, and industry elites filed in. The fashion house had announced an emergency press conference, sending ripples through the business world. No one knew exactly what was coming, but the rumors were explosive. Something about discrimination, identity, and a girl named Vanessa Jackson. And at the heart of it all, Jonathan Sterling, the enigmatic CEO, stood behind a velvet curtain pacing. He wasn't nervous about the press. He had faced boardrooms, billion-dollar mergers, and hostile takeovers. But today, he wasn't the CEO. He was a father. Earlier that morning, Vanessa sat alone on a bench near the shore of Lake Michigan, the water sparkling beneath the rising sun. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from Jasmine, journalists, even other fashion houses offering her contracts. But her mind was fixed on only one thing. Him. Jonathan Sterling. Her father. She had barely slept after their meeting at the Varelli Hotel. Her head was flooded with memories of her mother, Camille. How hard she worked, how gracefully she carried her pain. How she'd brushed off questions about Vanessa's father with a sad smile and a cryptic answer about how he wasn't strong enough. Vanessa hadn't understood then. She did now. Her anger was still fresh, but beneath it was something more confusing. Recognition. She'd seen the grief in Jonathan's eyes, the weight of decades without her. He hadn't just shown up with money or empty apologies. He'd come with letters, with memories, with the truth. And now she had a decision to make. Back at Sterling Vale, the ballroom lights dimmed, the curtain lifted. Jonathan stepped to the podium in a tailored gray suit, his silver hair backlit by soft white light. Cameras snapped. Reporters leaned forward. He looked calm, but his fingers gripped the edge of the podium with invisible tension. He greeted the crowd and began speaking, his voice steady. He said he was there not as the CEO of Sterling Vale, but as a man who must correct a wrong, one that began long before today, and one he was personally responsible for helping end. Murmurs rippled across the room. He continued, saying the world had seen a young woman speak truth to power. Vanessa Jackson, a talented designer, a voice of courage, and his daughter. The room fell silent. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. He confirmed it again. She was his daughter. Born from a relationship he had kept hidden out of fear. Fear imposed by his own family's prejudice. Fear that had cost him years of knowing the incredible young woman she had become. Gasps filled the room. He said she had come to Sterling Vale seeking an opportunity and was rejected. Not because of her resume or talent, but because of her skin color. Because of who she was. His jaw tightened as he said he would not tolerate this within the company that bore his name. Effective immediately, the hiring panel responsible for the decision had been dismissed, and Sterling Vale would begin a full audit of its hiring, internship, and promotion practices. Applause erupted from some in the back while others remained stunned. Then he added one more thing. Vanessa had accepted his invitation to join Sterling Vale, not as an intern, but as the creative director of inclusive design initiatives. The curtains parted again, and there she was. Vanessa Jackson. She walked confidently, head held high, in a sleek white power suit and gold jewelry that glowed against her rich brown skin. Her curls were styled in a crown, her presence radiant. As she approached the podium, a hush fell again. She greeted the crowd and said that 3 days ago she had left that building in tears. Today, she returned not just to claim her place, but to open the doors for others who looked like her, dreamed like her, and deserved to be seen. A wave of emotion moved through the room. She said she hadn't asked to be the face of a movement, but if her voice could challenge a system and bring light to injustice, then she would use it every day. She paused and looked at Jonathan. She said the company had failed her, but so did time, fear, and silence. She may never get those years back with her mother, but she stood here because truth had finally caught up to legacy. Jonathan blinked away tears. She said she accepted the role not as a favor but as a responsibility, and she wouldn't be the last. The applause was thunderous. Reporters jumped up, shouting questions, but Vanessa simply smiled, nodded to the cameras, and walked off stage, with her father beside her. That night, the city buzzed with headlines. Jonathan Sterling reveals secret daughter in viral redemption. Vanessa Jackson appointed director after discrimination scandal. Sterling Vale to revamp diversity structure under new leadership. Social media exploded. Vanessa Jackson trended for 48 hours. Designers and celebrities praised her courage. Some critics called it a publicity stunt, but most saw it for what it was, a reckoning. Days later, Vanessa stood in her new office on the top floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Sunlight poured in as she unpacked books, a few of her mother's scarves, and a framed photo of Camille. She placed it on the corner of her desk and whispered to herself that they had made it, Mama. A knock at the door. Jonathan stood there holding a cup of coffee. He asked if there was room for one more. She smiled faintly and said she supposed. He entered slowly and told her she had handled all of this with more grace than he deserved. She said he was right, but that the grace hadn't been for him. It had been for her. He nodded, then walked to the window and stared out. He said Camille was incredible. Vanessa joined him and said Camille had been her whole world. They stood in silence, watching boats drift across Lake Michigan. He asked if they were okay. Vanessa turned to him and said they weren't there yet, but she was open to finding out what okay looked like. Jonathan exhaled and said that was more than he deserved. She looked at him, and for the first time, saw not the CEO of an empire, but a man who had finally found his daughter. 1 year later, Sterling Vale had changed. Under Vanessa's leadership, the brand's first inclusive design line, Heritage, debuted in Paris to global acclaim. Models of every shade, shape, and background walked the runway wearing pieces inspired by African prints, Caribbean colors, indigenous beadwork, and urban culture. Backstage, cameras caught Jonathan hugging Vanessa, both of them beaming. When asked by a reporter how she felt, Vanessa answered simply that she wasn't there to fit in. She was there to make room. And she did. Sterling Estate, North Shore, Chicago. The fire crackled softly in the grand stone fireplace, casting flickering shadows across the room's high ceilings and elegant furnishings. But despite the luxury, the air in the room felt heavy, quiet, almost sacred. Vanessa Jackson sat curled in a wide leather armchair, her arms wrapped around her knees. Across from her, Jonathan Sterling watched her with patient eyes, a tumbler of untouched scotch resting in his hand. The evening had started light, dinner on the terrace, soft music playing, a few jokes between them. But it had shifted, as moments between a father and daughter often do when the wounds run deep. She hadn't planned to say what she said next. Her voice was soft as she spoke of her mother skipping meals so she could eat, working nights and weekends, cleaning houses, sometimes 2 or 3 in a day just to keep her in school. Jonathan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Vanessa went on, saying her mother never had much but made sure she had everything, uniforms, books, tutors. She came home dead tired and still quizzed her on algebra or grammar like it was her life's mission. Vanessa paused, blinking quickly, and said her mother did it all with a quiet pride, like raising her well was the only dream she ever needed. Tears welled in her eyes and she whispered that her mother never got to see any of this. Not the job, not the recognition, not even her in her first real suit. She passed out suffering from cancer. One morning she slept and never woke up. Her voice broke, and the room filled with the sound of her quiet sobs. Jonathan rose slowly, walked over, and knelt beside her chair. He said he should have been there. Not just now, but then. Every day her mother carried that weight alone. He should have helped carry it too. Vanessa didn't respond, but she didn't pull away. He looked up at her and said he couldn't bring her back or rewrite the years he missed, but he swore for every day forward he would make it count. For her, for Vanessa. A long silence hung between them. Finally, Vanessa nodded slowly and said her mother believed she was meant for something greater, that she'd make it. Jonathan reached up and gently held her hand and said she already had. The next morning, the glass doors to Sterling Vale gleamed under the morning sun as Vanessa walked toward the building. She wore a sleek ivory pantsuit, her mother's delicate locket nestled just below her collarbone. Her heels echoed confidently across the marble floor. As she entered the lobby, she paused. Something new was etched into the far wall, in tall, brushed gold lettering. The company motto now read, "Representation is not a favor. It's a foundation. Vanessa Jackson Sterling." Vanessa's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't approved this change either, but this time she understood it. She slowly turned toward the receptionist desk. The staff were watching her with soft, knowing smiles. One of them said they thought it was time the walls reflected who they really were. Vanessa blinked away tears and smiled, deep, full, and unshaken. She turned and walked down the hall toward her office, sunlight catching the locket at her throat. She didn't just belong in this place now. She defined it. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Bye. See you in our next video.